Welcome, everyone, to the last week of the Catholic Mom Book Club. Welcome to everyone that's here today. And we're talking with Rhonda Ortiz and about her engaging book, In Pieces, published by Chrism Press. And let me tell you, full disclosure, Rhonda, I just started reading the book. So
you are here, though. You are here.
We've just relocated to Virginia to be near our children, and I packed everything in my storage, thinking that I would already have access to it, and we don't close until next week. So I finally downloaded it on the Kindle. I mean, it's exciting, but I downloaded it on Kindle the other day, and I started reading it, and I can't stop. So I'm a coffee drinker. But my daughter, who went to Boston last month, went down to the harbor and did one of the kitschy tourist traps to get on the boat and throw a bale of tea over the side of the boat. Came with tea that they would have been drinking back in the day.
Oh, fantastic.
It is the nastiest thing I have ever tasted. It is disgusting. And so I am absolutely in agreement that oolong tea is gross. And so I can't throw that stuff into the harbor, but goodbye tea. It's awful. I'm sure that this has been a topic of discussion for some time now, but I'm going to just kind of hand it over to you and tell us where we are this week in this fourth part, and we'll get going.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much, and thank you again, Maria, Barb, for having me, and of course to Karen Yulo, my wonderful editor and partner in crime over at Chrism Press. Just so grateful to have everybody just reading this book with me. So anyway, In Pieces. We finished the book this week, so I'm going to give lots of spoilers for you, Maria. Sorry.
That's right.
So anyway, so we open up part 4 with Josiah's return. And I will say that part 4 is called Josiah's Suit. Yes, it is a pun. Yes, I am not above puns. I love puns. So Josiah's Suit and Josiah's Suit. So we open up. Josiah is home, and he comes home to Amali, who is out of mourning. She is welcoming the advances of a man that she does not really care for, because she's convinced herself that this is going to work out in order to save everybody's hide. And she doesn't really want to tell Josiah because deep down she knows that she's doing something wrong. In the meantime, Josiah actually does in fact begin to properly suit her, court her, his suit. He begins his suit. She's also sewing a suit, and in the process of this, the ending of this chapter, we have a lot of things going on. We have the unfolding of the investigation, this mystery. Why did he go to Philadelphia? Okay, he was being recruited, but then he gets home and there's these French spies and they attack him in a back alley, and he gets rescued by this mysterious woman who had been following Molly around town. And it turns out that she is a federal investigator. She's on this spy team, this team of domestic intelligencers. Her name is Eliza Hall. Comes up in the next book. We have Eliza's story in Adrift. I love Eliza. And as well as Thomas Melville, who is a real life character, not really an intelligencer. I mean, he did collect intelligence, but that's Rhonda's fictionalizing things. But anyway, and he was a real person. And then 2 other characters, Antoine de Laurent, and I just butchered the French. Karen's not going to correct me. And James Walden, who is butler to the Warren family. So, Josiah is asked to join them. This is an answer to a huge problem that Josiah has, which is his job, which is his relationship to trade, world, the time at the time, and then also his relationship to his family and Molly and just being home. So he has this great, spy thing. Molly, in the meantime, is making her way toward this idea of this sort of arranged marriage of convenience. Not really an arranged marriage, but a marriage of convenience. She receives a proposal of marriage. In the meantime, she's trying to get ready for this party. And she and Josiah figures it out. They fight. He doesn't understand her. She doesn't understand him. He wants to tell her, et cetera, et cetera. And we have the party. And at the party, Daniel Warren is inebriated and puts his hand up her skirts in a drunken, stupid move, and causes a lapse, causes one of Molly's flashbacks. And when she comes to, she realizes exactly, how low this man had gone. And she rejects him in front of an entire party, his parents, everybody. Josiah, in the meantime, the whole movement of this last part is that he is allowing Molly to come to solve her own problem. He would like to step in, and the kind of spiritual discipline that he's under, it's a spiritual discipline, is waiting on her. And she does. He waits all the way. He takes her to this party. He knows what's coming. He takes her anyway. And she realizes, as this guy's proposing, that she doesn't want to marry him, and she tries to tell him no, and he's just too drunk to listen. And so we end up, there's the disclosure of all that is going on, and then finally the wonderful proposal scene, and we move on into the second book. There's plenty of cliffhangers at the end of this one.
Well, I really appreciate, and I can see it, and I just felt that I needed to tell you I haven't finished reading the book, but I don't mind the spoilers. It just gives me something to look forward to. But it's very evident to me from the very beginning that this is going to be a coming of age story, because it's not that they're both innocent at the beginning, but yes, I definitely think that Molly has a great deal of inexperience. And I really like Josiah and how protective he is and how manly he is in terms of being really the head of the household and buying that home, thinking one day that he would bring his wife there. So could you describe the maturing process that takes place for Molly and Josiah, both individually and in their relationship? I mean, how does this lay a foundation for their future marriage? And I think that Daniel is a cad already.
Good. It's always interesting to me. I always have an easier time discussing Josiah's arc in this book in terms of the maturing process. I think in part because Molly's story happens over several volumes. But what happens? For her, and actually, I'm going to start with him because it actually has its origins there. He goes from what I would think of like the habits of immaturity between the two of them, or the habits of childhood, if you would say, between the two of them. They have very, very deep habits, ruts. The ruts are deep in terms of the way they interact with each other. And for him, the pivot through the whole book is twofold. One, it's finding new ways of being with her, but specifically learning to respect her. And then the second piece is that he's learning how to be intimate, which is not necessarily like, I think in the sense of like disclosing things to her that he hadn't disclosed before. I think in the sense of like, Josiah, for all of his kind of outgoing personality, is actually rather reserved. And he does not share things about himself easily. And that comes up, I think, in the third part. It comes up. Filippo happens to mention, like, the men will be, well, you know, women would mind that, you know, the men will know you'll say something when you're going to say something, you know, but a woman would actually want to know what's going on, right? And this is like a revelation for Josiah. It's like, you know, like, not only would women want to know this, but like, you guys think I'm reserved, you know, like, I didn't know that, you know, I'm very friendly, and he is. So, but that there's like a sense of like, yeah, those two pieces right there, I think, are important. But the respect is probably the primary piece. Is that is we need a new mode of being together, and it's going to look like a grown-up mode. So that's for I think Josiah. For Molly is responding to that, and the whole arc of this book in terms of the courtship plot for her is that she goes from this kind of distance of like, I like, you know, this person is very dear to me, but he's also obnoxious, you know, and that's that she holds all of that kind of relationship all in one. You know, he's very dear to me, he's my closest friend, he's also drives me crazy. To the realization that he's not just a tease, to this slow realization that, oh, you know, like there's these little slow pieces along the way where she realizes, oh, he's not just a tease. Okay, he's a good man. Okay, he's taking care of me. Oh, people think he's attractive. You know, this is like people think that we could be married. That's like a whole like thing that she would never even like imagine. She just couldn't even like picture it. And then it becomes, you know, oh wait, in the suit, you know, his suit, she makes his suit. And of course, for Molly, sewing and mantua making, in this case, tailoring, is a way of seeing people, is a way of trying to understand them. And it's when she sees him in the suit that she is made for him. She finally sees him as a man, and an attractive man, and a man that, you know, this is a spouse. This is a person who she could marry.
Yeah, I saw seeds of that. Yeah. I saw seeds of that very early, and I thought it was really kind of endearing in a kind of I don't know, in a very mother-son conversation when Mrs. Robin, Sarah, that's her name,
yeah, Sarah,
tells him to back off, that he needs to let her sort things out before he declares his love to her, even though it becomes evident to her that he's fallen head over heels for Molly. Yeah. But I was really touched by the one little scene where he was wearing the reading glasses, and that she looked at him and saw him as an attractive man, and that he liked that, and that the next time that he wore those glasses, right, he had a little moment of, oh, perhaps you will like this.
I think I look like an old man, but if she thinks I look good, I'll wear them.
But there's certainly those little nuggets in there throughout that, well, you know, I don't know if you know that I'm a retired literature teacher, professor. So I'm looking for these little beautiful nuggets. And Karen, I'm sure that when you're reading these stories, you're also helping to draw out those little details that come in the beginning to make sure that they come to fruition at the end. So for me to read it and to know the spoilers is a particular pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, go ahead, Karen.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, that's something of course, that's something that, you know, we look at in an editorial process, is making sure that, you know, was it Chekhov that said, if you put a gun in Act 1, it has to go off in Act 3? You know, you have to, we call it planting and payoff. If you've planted something, then it has to pay off, you know, whether that be reading glasses or the loaded gun, you know, at whatever level. But with Rhonda, I don't have to do a whole lot of that kind of editing, because she's very good at bringing them back anyway.
I am detail oriented. It's obnoxious, but it's good for story.
I highly appreciate it. It is from part of the reader, for sure. So you say that Josiah's arc, you think, is more or easier to define?
in this one. I think
Yeah.
so. And I think this is, one of the things we had discussed, I'm not sure if it was week 1 or week 2, but with Molly, we don't know what a healthy Molly looks like. We don't actually know that going into the book. And so, it's harder, and she has a much slower arc that for me, I see it coming into fruition really in a drift, and then coming into its fullness in the 3rd book, which I'm writing. But yeah, Josiah's arc, I think, is more I think clearly delineate, like it's clear to see because he has, I think, clearer faults at the beginning. Molly has faults, don't get me wrong. The girl's got lots of attitude at times, but yeah, I mean, I think like the sense of like he has a very clear goal. She does too, but his is like, I'm going to get the girl, I got to figure out my job, there's the problems, and then there's the religion piece, and all of those problems actually, interestingly, they're all related to each other, right? And so those are just kind of the external things, but in terms of his internal character arc, the things that are holding a lot of that back is a kind of, I would say, almost like it's like a clinging to adolescence, I think, in some sense, I mean, I don't know. I would say, but yeah, so he has very clear goals. And so that makes his arc much clearer, because when you're pursuing very clear external goals, the internal arc comes with it. Molly it's a subtle. Go ahead.
I know why you're saying that, but I somewhat disagree, because Molly has very clear external goals as well. She does. She needs a place to live. She needs a way of supporting herself, and she needs to either somehow heal or at least hide the fact that she has, what we call PTSD, that she doesn't have a name for, but these lapses. So Molly has very clear external goals too. I think what really makes it different from Josiah's story is that the solutions she's pursuing are the wrong ones. Whereas in Josiah's case, the solutions he's pursuing are the right ones. So I don't think it's really that he has clearer goals. Molly has very clear goals. It's just that she is pursuing them in a way that's ultimately going to prove to be not beneficial. And it's not till the end that she sees that and takes a turn.
How much of that do you think is
so her arc is?
Oh, go ahead.
I just think that her arc is, you say it's slower, but I think in some ways it's actually faster, because once she finally gets to that, it just takes her longer to get to the turn. But once she makes it very quickly.
Well, I think that a lot of it seems to be trauma driven, right? Where Josiah seems to just have a healthy outlook on what it is that he wants, but Molly seems to be kind of reactive. At least, as far as I've come along in her story. What do you have to say about her trauma and how it drives her decisions and her behaviors?
Yeah, we have been touching on this, and when I was thinking about this question, or just thinking about this as a topic for tonight, it's something that we've definitely come a long way. One of the pieces that one particular scene in tonight's reading that I think is probably related, it's a related question, but it's also very illuminating, is it's a really brief one, but it's Daniel Warren. And he, as those of you, so if you read it, you realize what Daniel Warren is, a big manipulative jerk. But he's actually, I, as his author, actually have weird sympathy for him. So but he makes this comment so he basically, the game that everybody is playing around Molly is trying to show Daniel Warren for what he is. And Daniel Warren is playing the game of turning whatever it is that they've shown her to his advantage. So, so one of the things that happens is that Mark Fenley, everybody give us 3 cheers for Mark Fenley. Mark Fenley! We love Mark. Mark Fenley gets Molly at Joey Christensen's wedding, right? He finally, he gets her alone. This is the first time they've ever conversed. And they've never actually formally met. And she doesn't like him because he's laughing at her. And he's laughing at her. She's not privy to the joke, right? But he's laughing at her because he's trying to get her to admit that Josiah is allowed to like her. And this is an okay thing. But in the process of this, he's able to make this point with Daniel coming in right at the end, make this point that Josiah is a better man than Daniel Warren. Now, he never says this direct, like this is said in a way that's, it's clear to Daniel what Mark Fenley is doing. It's not entirely clear to Molly what Mark Fenley is doing, but Mark is trying to make a comparison. And it's like, Josiah basically doesn't take advantage of people. He's not taking advantage of weakness. And that's, of course, what Daniel Warren is doing. And so anyway, so the next move that Daniel makes is they're at the church. It's after church. She's going with Mr. And, Daniel's kind of cornered her in the church yard. And Daniel says, I have to tell you something. I have this really good news. My father is going to offer Josiah a ship. So his father is a ship owner, and he's going to ask and see if Josiah wants to be one of the masters, one of the ship masters. So he basically would be the captain. He wouldn't own it, but he would be the captain. And wouldn't that be just wonderful? So Josiah has this job problem, right? And Molly's like, Josiah's always wanted his own ship. That's amazing. Like, this is the nicest thing that anybody could have, and it was your idea, wasn't it? And then he says, so basically this is your kindness. And he says, well, kindness is not my gift. I mean, just talk to my sister, who he's a horrible person to. And, and this is Molly's friend. And there's been this wedge of distrust just placed between Molly and Prudence because of this whole thing. So, it's like, just ask my sister. She can just, confirm that I'm not nice. Kindness is not my best quality, my best trait. But basically, I could be better. I'm not beyond redemption. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And Molly says in the narrative, this is her observation in the narrative, that he was just like her father. This was just like her parents. Now, John Chase is not a cruel man. He was not manipulative. But Molly's mother, and this is kind of comes out in hints and pieces throughout the book, Molly's mother was kind of his source of, like, he had depression, I think, and so he had issues, and she was this source of stability in his life. And so, so Molly makes this, she's like, this is just like he's just like my father, and I can be just like my mother and help him. And it's like, and so you see this kind of like twisted thinking where you say Molly is a kind person. Molly has good intentions, but how is it that trauma has just absolutely, like, this kind of, like, she's acting out of a desperation to, like, save her friends, save herself. Everything needs to be hidden. Everything needs to get cleaned up. I'm a screwed up mess. And here is this man who is offering to fix all of it if I just marry him. And he's admitting to his weakness. He's being vulnerable. And she said, he's being vulnerable. His sister would never believe it. He's being vulnerable right now. He's just like my father. Whoa.
That's a lot.
Is a lot. Yeah. So anyway, so I mean, so you get it. It's just like these layers of it, and it's
Yeah.
like he's playing it. I mean, he's just playing the whole piece.
And does that terrify her too? Because I mean, her father killed himself.
I know. It's just like, why are you not like, here I am. I'm the author, right? I'm like, Molly, red flag. Like, girlfriend, like,
But he also had that generosity, didn't he? He lent Josiah that money at the beginning when he was a young man.
Oh no, that was her father. Yeah. No.
Oh, that was her. Yeah, it was her father.
Yes.
So he had that. He also had that streak of kindness.
Well, her father was a good man. Yeah, this is the thing. But I think what she's seeing is like, she's seeing somebody who's being vulnerable, a man who's being vulnerable with the woman he loves. Right. And so she's saying this like, oh, this is just like my parents. My mother helped my father. My mother was a source of strength for my father. My mother helped my father be a better person, which is all true. I could do that for this man. I could help him. He says he's not beyond redemption. He's not beyond redemption. And so you see this, it's like, she wants to emulate her mother. I mean, she loves her mother, and her mother was a good woman, right? So but at the same time, this is somebody using kind of like the loss of her family, or like using this moment of trauma to take advantage of something he wants.
To be the hero.
Yeah, to be the hero. He is the hero in his own story, of course.
Yeah.
He's restoring her to her rightful place.
Amazing. So where would you say that she has made progress in her healing?
Hey, Karen, you want to take a shot? Or Barb?
I can only ask the questions.
I don't know how much progress she's made quite yet, because she's still allowing herself to be led by her own desperation.
Ooh.
It's all, I've got to hide.
Yeah,
I've got to hide what's wrong with me, and I have to find a way to do that, and I have to, secure food, clothing, and shelter.
Yeah.
Where does she fail then?
Yeah, I think we get a lot more of the healing in Adrift in the second book. And, once she has, she's still not quite secure, at least for, part of that book. But when she has at least the promise of security, because she is engaged now and knows where her life is going, and that she is going to be in a place where she's safe and loved. So I think more of that happens in the second book of this series. But, in pieces, I think the moment of healing is simply the recognition of what she already has in Josiah at the end.
And the Robs, and Sarah.
Yeah, in
Deb.
Josiah and his family.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of a piece. Or like, I think the way that the way the scene plays in that last chapter is that she realizes she doesn't understand why her father died. She doesn't understand why God did not answer her prayers. She prayed for her father. She did not want this. Why God let it happen, she does not understand. He left her alone is the whole thing. Like throughout the book, when she does think about God, and it's spread throughout there. I mean, you can't help but think about God because you're in the Rob home, and you're in Boston. But this kind of like, it's she can't help but think about God. But when she does, it's like, God left, like, I'm abandoned. I am lonely. I am helpless. I am sick. I hate this. I want to be well. This is not a girl who wants to be passive, and she does not like being the damsel in distress. This is not what she wants for her life. But then she keeps getting pushed back. Right. And so this kind of sense of like, but the realization that she wasn't left alone is like really, really, really important. This is the reconciliation moment with God, is that he allowed her father's death, but he did not leave her alone. They're friends in her life. She has friends. And that this is, it doesn't answer the question about her father, but it does say something about God's providential care. And that's part of that turning point too. I think, Karen, I think you're right. Like the whole turn for Molly is really, it's a slow, gradual, and then, and then she does flip around.
Yeah. Exactly. It's once you get, it takes her forever to reach for the switch, but once she hits it, and obviously that's not full healing. You don't come out of trauma in a moment, but it is the moment that she turns and, kind of moves toward the upward slope instead of the downward one.
Yeah.
Well, I like the idea that she's not alone. I mean, obviously the Robs take her in immediately, but this idea of friendships and spiritual friendships and people who are in tune with actually wanting the best for you, I think it's a beautiful way to, I guess, help in that recovery or help to live the right way, right? What are some of the friendships that are in this book that are, they meet kind of different needs for Molly?
Yeah. Let's see. So I think we start with the humorous, or at least I think the most humorous pieces of friendship are the machinations of the courtship, right? And that Molly and Josiah are unaware of. All these movements of armies to pull them together or pull them apart, this is, there's all these pieces in place on the chess. They are just there are two pieces on the chessboard. There's a big chessboard going on here, and so, and this is, and I find this, it's so lovely to look at that friendships through, these are people who are, whether they're main characters or minor characters who are working toward the good of the protagonists, or in the case, or away from the protagonist, working for their ill. And I think those are always some really interesting friendships dynamics to look at. I really like even one's really itty bitty one example. And again, as Karen talks about, you place things and you just kind of keep threading it through. There's one really minor character. So her friend Joy Christensen has a brother, Frank Christensen, who likes her. Molly. He likes Molly. And, it's just this little thing, but right. But whenever he sees, he's a physician, he's a smart man. Whenever he sees her, he's just good. And he just can't. It's gets all embarrassed and he just can't. Anyway, well, they get to the wedding, his sister's wedding, and they need Joy and Prudence are trying to, create a moment for Molly and Mark Finley to be alone together long enough for Mark to knock some sense into her head. But Daniel Warren's on the prowl and they need a decoy, so they go to Frank. And he's like, stick a knife in me, man. This is his sister going can you get, it's he wants to talk to Molly, what's it, it's we need to help him along. Anyway, and it's just this this little tiny nugget of okay, here's somebody who's a friend, not a close friend, but he likes this girl and he's actually going to sacrifice himself in this small way and to help advance the court, her happiness, which is not with him, and so it's even little stuff like that where you think gosh, that he's a hero.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a total minor character, tiny little itty bitty minor character. Anyway, in the second book, when Josiah finally gets the story out of Mark Finley, he's even Chris, I owe him a pint. I owe him a pint. I mean, so there's the little stuff like that where, you just get to see oh gosh, each of these people are, having this role to play. And then you have, of course, the more intimate friendships as well. And that forms, I think, the bulk of the story. So Yeah.
I liked how fiercely protective Prudence was of her, and especially against the old biddies wanting to stir up the mud in the way that the unseemliness of the relationship.
I know.
But
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
and Prudence, I mean, the thing with Prudence is that she's highly logical. And so I know you guys remember this line from, I don't know if it's the Harry Potter movies or something, but anyway, Hermione, everybody's like, that was brilliant, Hermione. She's like, no, actually, I'm just highly logical and I can see through extraneous details to find the right answer. They're like in the middle of a panic situation and she's just like, like, okay, extraneous good for the, and Prudence is that kind of a character, where she's just able to see it. So like, so when people are, so she loves Molly not because Molly is as talented as she is. I mean, Molly has different talents. I think for Prudence, Molly is kind to her. Molly listens to her. Like she's a very devoted to her friend because her friend is kind and because Prudence doesn't eat with kindness at home. So when these women say illogical things about this person who's very kind to her, she can just she goes right to the illogic of it. She's saying something like, the really nasty comment. The old lady, Mrs. Lawrence, makes this really nasty comment, said, basically, and Miss Chase is, curvy. And you know how it is with girls like that, right? Like this is, and Prue's like, as if, somebody's, body shape, figure is actually an indication of their moral personhood. Like this is absolutely nothing to do with her. It was just like, this is just a nasty comment, and Prudence can just cut right through it, and she does. And she just calls people out as necessary, which is kind of, she's great like that. Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite character, a favorite friendship in this mix? I mean, I really like Prudence. I think I just like that she stood up to the old biddies.
I have been favorite.
I mean, Prudence for Molly and Mark Finley for Josiah. You can't beat Mark Finley, and so they're just, each of them in his or her own way is just so unique, and you can see a quote on a mug like Rhonda I think is drinking from right now, and know exactly which character spoke that line, even if you haven't read the book yet. If you haven't read the second book, you'd recognize who it's from. Oh, that one.
This one's Josiah.
That's Josiah.
I did not bring my Mark Finley mug tonight.
Okay, I thought you had your lover mug.
No, I don't have my lover mug. I have a coffee mug.
They're just, they have such... They have their very distinctive voices in addition to their very distinctive personalities, and you just can't wait for them to get back on the page.
Yeah.
And do you have any friendships in this that are not admirable, or I don't know? I want to ask if they're toxic, but I don't know that they're toxic so much as just not.
Definitely Tabitha Breyer. The thing with Tabitha Breyer is that she comes off as a ditz, but she's actually quite intelligent. She sees things. She's onto certain things, certain details. Like she can see it, but her entire worldview underpinning of her worldview is really predicated on really getting married. That's it, which is not totally unusual for this time period, right? But it takes on a really nasty tinge at some point, and because she has a way of just everything is reductionist.
Oh.
Everything is, this part of the book towards here at part 4, right before the wedding, right before Joy Christensen's wedding, Joy Christensen sends a note, I've ruined my dress, I ruined my gown, I need help, emergency. So the girlfriends all convene just fix the dress, you know, and to
That's
fix the gown.
manipulative.
Right. I mean, it's a very like, you know, hyperventilating bride, Molly, the talented seamstress going, I got this. Hold on, let me think, you know. And then the other girlfriend's there for support, because we do need them there for support, right? You know, somebody's got to talk, and you know, and then you have this moment where they're, you know, Deb comes with Molly on this one, and so Molly and Deb are pinning up the gown after they've repaired it. And Tabitha and Prudence are sitting on this little side sofa while Joy's standing because she's getting her gown pinned, right? And Tabitha brings up the fact that she hears Molly's about to get married, about these rumors about Daniel Warren. She doesn't, you know, and she's so like, you know, and it just comes out of this like finally, you know, you just, you know, finally getting married so the rest of us can get married. Though I don't understand why you would go for Daniel Warren. You should probably just take the easy, low-hanging fruit. You know, the guy that whose house you're living in. And like her, like, okay, so there's Molly who's embarrassed, but she's used to Tabitha. And then there's his sister, Deb is there. And she's never heard, like, I don't think she's, you know, like this is the kind of like, and Tabitha makes this point, you know, I mean, they're trying, the girlfriends are just like, you know, knock it off, you know, like, you know, and they're getting increasingly anxious. And Tabitha makes this comment. She says, well, if he had more money, I'd marry him. He's built like a Greek god.
Wow. Poor Deb. I didn't even think about her because she really is an innocent. I mean, like she's just coming out into the scene now, and wow, what an ugly.
And then, you know, and this is what
sides to it,
right? And then, but what's interesting about this, right? So Tabitha, you know, she makes this nasty comment, and then finally, you know, the girlfriends, you know, I think Prudence is like, just do yourself a favor and shut up, you know, like, you know, it's just all a favor. But like on the way home from this thing, you know, Molly's upset because the whole conversation was this very, I mean, it revealed, there's a mirror to it, right? Tabitha is revealing the lowness of what Molly is doing. Molly herself is doing something reductionist. She is treating marriage as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And she is treating Daniel Warren as a means to an end. Now, Daniel Warren's a jerk, but she is still treating him as a means to an end, and that is wrong. And you know, and then there's just all this stuff. And then she's embarrassed for Josiah, but she's also embarrassed for Deb. But then Deb comes out on the same thing. And she says, Tabitha. Deb says, Deb is upset because Tabitha has revealed Deb's jealousy. So Tabitha is jealous of Molly, and Deb can see it. But Deb is also jealous of Molly. And that Tabitha reveals this to Deb. You know, and that this is what Tabitha does. Is she is a truth teller, and she's completely obnoxious, and she is toxic. I mean, I think toxic friendship would be probably a good way to do it, to say that. But yeah, it's yeah. So it's an interesting moment of, you know, when somebody who is basically able to show the ugliness of this entire situation by making a really ugly, blunt, you know, comment in a girlfriend situation, right?
That's right.
So.
That's awful. Well, you know, but it's sometimes it's human nature too. I mean, these are things that come out in relationships, and when you're mixing a bunch of people together. But it's not quite as villainous, I think, as Daniel is. Is he the villain? Is he the villain in the story? Is he? I need to know because I need to finish this tonight.
So that whole part about Daniel setting up Josiah with a ship and getting him out of the picture.
Oh, yes. This ship's going to China. Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's going to be gone for quite a long time.
Oh, yes. No. And you know what's so great about this is that, you know, Prudence